Thank you for joining us today. Anything you hear in this podcast is not to be taken for medical advice. This podcast is for information purposes only, and should you find something interesting in the information spoken about, please consult your physician further.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Broken Road Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Peterson. I'm joined today by my good friend, Dennis Moore. How you doing today, brother?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a long time that we've been talking about this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I didn't know that I was going to make it this far to be able to do it, so I'm super excited.
Yeah.
And I know you are too, just in general. It's Men's Health Awareness Month, and I saved the best for last, I think. I'll get everybody a little bit jealous about that's been on this month. Don't be bashful. No, this dude's legit. And he's a strong man, strong husband and father, a veteran, a good Christian man, and somebody that inspires me constantly, daily. So, that's kind of my take on it and how I see it. I'm sure that's a short take on it, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
First of all, I appreciate you and your kind words, but the truth is I don't see myself like that at all. And, I'm trying to grow every day just like everyone else.
Right.
Trying to be a better husband and a better father, which is a roller coaster ride with kids. But yeah, I am Dennis Moore. I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts. I graduated high school in 2003 and went right into the military. I enlisted as an airborne infantry guy. From after basic training in airborne school, I went to Korea with the 1st Battalion 503rd Air Assault Unit out of Camp Casey from 2nd ID. And, back then we were all just a bunch of young 18, 19-year-old kids. And quite honestly, we were pissed off because we were getting sent to Korea. And we were going to miss out on the war. In our opinion, that's what we thought. But, about 5 or 6 months into the little trip to Korea, we came down on orders for Iraq. And I remember as soon as, I think it was a battalion size formation, when they told us that, everyone was cheering and excited. We're just a bunch of young kids wanting to go fight a war. I think that we knew nothing about.
Right.
You know what I mean? But back then, we're talking 2003, 2004, so it was early on. And a lot of those guys in that timeline specifically enlisted to go fight.
Right. Yeah. 20 years ago.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you look at it that way.
Yeah. And so from Korea, we went to Iraq, and I spent 12 months in Ramadi, Iraq at that point. We were at this small combat outpost. Everyone just called it the COP on Route Michigan. And then we took over some type of I think it was like a women's college or some type of community college across the street from the COP, and we made and built Camp Corregidor. And from there, I mean, it was the real deal. It was a mess. I think for a long time it kind of felt like a one-way ass whooping. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it felt like we were getting the brunt of it.
So this is very shortly after 9/11. Right? That was 2001, correct?
Yeah, I went to Iraq in 04, maybe September 04.
So you had gone through training, and I said that just because there was excitement to go and fight, and there was a reason why you were going at that point. Obviously, the longer you got away from that moment in history, the more I'm sure it was frustrating. You wanted to get out there and help. And
we were all scared we were going to miss it. I mean, when 9/11 happened, I was a junior in high school, and I was like, man, I still need to graduate before the Army will take me in.
Right.
So, I had a whole nother, my senior year I had to go through.
And I just want to point it out because as time goes on, there's a lot of young people growing up now that don't remember any of that. So I think it's important to make it clear to them what was going on during that time, why that push was there to go. And that excitement was built, and you're ready to go fight for your country. So anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No,
I
not
did
at
want
all.
to stop for a minute and just kind of clarify that for our audience.
Yeah, and then, just for the audience, what the American people were told is that we had to go into Iraq for weapons of mass destruction, which is a whole other conversation that,
Right.
This isn't the time and place for that. But that's a hard conversation for me to have. Whether we needed to be there or not, I don't know. I think Saddam was a terrible dude and needed to die.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Iraqi people needed to be set free.
Mm-hmm.
But should we have done that? I don't. That's a whole other conversation. But I lost a lot of dudes over there, and to know that it was based on a lie, in my opinion,
right.
Man, that hurts. That hurts a lot.
Yeah, and maybe we can revisit. I mean, I hope this podcast goes on for years, so I'd love to have you back on again, and maybe we can go over some of the specifics of that and your opinion. It goes into that rabbit hole because that is another conversation that we could spend probably a full day on easily, and probably have more guys here. Maybe we can have a table discussion one day about that. But we are trying to focus on men's health, mental health, those deals. So I guess fast forward into your combat time, there had to have been some things that you had to deal with, compartmentalize while you were there, and kind of deal with at the moment and afterwards.
Yeah, like I said, leaving Korea, we were a bunch of just young 18, 19-year-old kids that were excited to go fight for our country. I don't think in my mind death was ever an option. You know what I mean? I just thought I was Superman. This is what God created me to be, to do. And I don't remember being afraid. I just remember the excitement. And our very first mission that we did, I think we were doing some false insertions to Fallujah, from Habaniya, which was a short trip down the road from Ramadi. But anyway, our very first mission outside the wire, my buddy Jason Sparks got shot in the head. And that was mission one, first time. And then it was like, oh my gosh, man, this is the real deal. And then you saw a bunch of, yesterday it was a bunch of 18, 19-year-old kids that were excited to go to war. And then today we're still, the next day, it's like, oh my gosh, man, we're not all coming back. And that was a rude awakening. And then when we finally started operating and living in Ramadi, it was horrific. I was, and that was, the first time I went there, but I was there in Ramadi 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007 as a light infantry guy. Our very first trip there, my company was assigned the Malab district. And just to show you how violent that was, we did 12 months there. And then on our second rotation back to Ramadi, that Malab district that we had assigned to our company, we fought and took back with a battalion plus tanks.
Wow.
And it was just a difference in leadership. I believe that we had much better leadership the second go and more support the second trip. But the first trip, the Malab district was my company's, and I mean we operated all over, but Malab was ours. And then that second trip, we used a battalion of people to fight for them, that one little area.
Wow. And as far as area goes, also just for me and civilians, I mean, how big was that area? Would you say that it took that much?
Well, I mean, it was inner city. The cities over there are a little bit different than ours. Every house is surrounded by 6, 8, 9 foot walls, courtyards. So when you're looking down these city streets, they look like hallways, and you need to enter into some type of gate or a courtyard to get out of the street. And that was, that kind of sucked to be honest with you, because when you get an ambush from a street corner, you got to break into a courtyard or hit the next corner where you could hide behind. Otherwise, it's like just getting lit up and ambushed in a hallway. and there's nowhere to go. So that was tough. But as far as what you're talking about, as far as men's health, so I spent a total of 27 months in Ramadi. And then later on in my career, I went to Afghanistan for a shorter trip. I ended up getting out of the Army in 2015. And I got out of the Army in Fayetteville, North Carolina, out of the 82nd Airborne, and applied and got hired with the Fayetteville Police Department. And so I've been a police officer from that point on. I spent about 2 years as a Fayetteville cop in North Carolina, and then transitioned down to Texas. So I've been married 15 years, and we just had our third kid, which is weird because our third child is actually our oldest. We adopted. She was 14 when we first saw a video of her, Ava. Adoption went through last year, May time frame. And so that was a whole nother fight. But so, yeah, a little time in the military. I did 12 years there. I've been a cop for the past going on 10 years now. I'm getting old.
Right.
Or older.
I think that talking about Ava, and just to wrap that back in, because I did mention that I felt like you were a good family man and a strong Christian. I think that goes to attest to you and Johanna both of what where your heart's set, and that you would step out there and do something like that. That's not for the faint of heart either.
Hardest thing I've ever done. I think I was joking earlier. I think Ramadi might have been easier than adopting a teenager.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely wild. But as far as talking about men's health and mental health, I thought for the longest time that I was absolutely fine coming out of Ramadi. Afghanistan was pretty kinetic as well. We got into some pretty good gunfights over there, and we had 2 helicopters get shot down helping us out. But Ramadi was just a different beast. And I always in my head, it's just war. That's how it goes. It's not a big deal. And my wife told me I had PTSD. I didn't know it. Right. And that was hard. I never did any of the VA stuff, getting out. And then it came to a point where there were some incidences that happened in my sleep that sucked. It really hurt. Johanna, I was going to bed pretty early because I'd wake up and work out and go be a cop and whatever else. So, but so typically I'd be in bed, sometimes sleeping before Johanna came in the room. And, unfortunately one night she just opened the door and took one step in the door, and she said I was all over her. She didn't even get all the way in the door, and I just grabbed her and like, who the fuck are you? And, I had no idea who she was, didn't know where I was at, didn't know anything. And then she's like, instantly you snapped out of it and then went back to bed and went to sleep. It's like it never happened.
Right.
And I had no idea about any of this. So the next day I woke up and Johanna's not next to me. I'm like, that's weird. Maybe she's downstairs, making some bacon and eggs and some fresh coffee. So I go downstairs and she's not downstairs. And we're not, we don't have any kids at this point. It's just the 2 of us. And I'm like looking around, and I had no idea where my wife was at. And then I went into a guest bedroom. And I said, why are you sleeping? I found her in the guest room, and I'm like, why are you sleeping in the guest bedroom? And she said, like, what do you like? Do you have any idea what happened last night? And I'm like, no. What are you talking about? And so she told me, I essentially balled her up, and she said she had to go back out of the room, and she had to come back in. And when I had to go back out of the room, and she said she was too scared to come back in the room.
Yeah, that's hard, man.
And that sucked to hear. That my wife was scared of me. But she was always like so like she never blamed me for anything. But she said, "Hey, if like I'm good. Like if this is how we're gonna live, like no, like I'm with you. But if we're gonna live like this, like let's get you some help, or let's get you some type of disability. You've been through a lot. Again, if we have to live like this, let them square you away with some of your benefits that you deserve." And so it was hard for me because, man, I'm Dennis Moore. Like, I'm perfect. Nothing bad happens to me. Like,
It's an invisible thing too.
Yeah, I don't need help.
We've been
I'm
talking
fine.
about that a lot. Yeah, you can't see it really from the outside looking in a lot.
And then my perspective was, I had a lot of buddies that got killed, a lot of buddies that came back with missing limbs, and it's like, I'm perfectly fine. I don't have a scratch on my body. Like, I am, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so, but I couldn't see past like everyone else's physical injuries. So I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm thankful to be here. My God protected me, and I'm good. And I'm gonna keep trucking along. So after that incident, man, she kind of talked me into going to the VA, and don't quote me on this, but I was already out of the Army at this point. I was still in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I went to the VA, and I honestly was in and out of there in from the best of my memory, like less than 10 minutes. And I went in there. She said, "Hey, I sat down with this woman, and hey, what are you here for?" And I'm like, "Hey, I'm here for disability." And she's like, "Well, what have you been diagnosed with?" And I said, "Well, nothing. That's kind of what I'm here to get help with." And she's like, "Well, if you haven't been diagnosed with anything, I can't help." Like, she picked up her pen, like she was gonna write something down. What are you here for, or what have you been diagnosed with? And I said, "I haven't been diagnosed with anything." She put her pen down. She never even wrote down my name. Like,
and that says that's a testament to what the VA did. Well, because that was before it became a very known thing that there was a lot of things that brain damage type things that happened. And I'm not saying you're brain damaged. I don't know what you're going to tell us. I'm sure, but they didn't realize.
She threw her pen. She put her pen down and said, "I can't help you." And I got up and walked out, and I was so angry because it took me. I had to swallow so much pride just to walk through the front door. And then you hear, like, I was like, "Man, do you know how hard it was for me to?" And in my head, I'm like, "Do you have any idea how hard it was for me just to walk through the door and ask for help?" And you, in less than 10 minutes, you tell me, "No, I can't help you." I was like, "Man, that's why these places." I don't know if I can say this or not, but like, that's why these places get shot up. You know what I mean? It was this.
No, this is the place to say it. That's what we're trying to prevent, man.
I was so angry. Man, I was pissed. And then it was some like private company that actually helped me out and stuff. But but as far with the issues, like you still deal with them. I think the hardest one was that incident that I told you about. Grabbing Johanna in my sleep. Years later, we moved to Texas, and we have Raina, our first child, and she walked in as like a, I don't know, 2 or 3 year old girl, and woke me up. And the same thing happened. I scooped my precious little girl up, and I grabbed her, and I yelled at her. And I had no idea. And then she said, "Mom, I really don't like when Dad scares me like that." And if you've ever met me and Raina, that she's my world. Like, she's my absolute world. She's got me around her finger.
She's neat.
But,
I can only imagine that.
I was always trying to figure out where that came from, and to the best of my knowledge, I can just trace it back to just one specific ambush that I got into, and I was sleeping on a rooftop, and then we just got hammered. And in this gunfight, I'm sleeping, but I can hear it going on. But I thought that I was dreaming that we were in a gunfight. You know what I mean? And then I remember my buddy Jason Miller grabbed me up, more, we're getting ambushed. And he shook me awake, and we went and got after it. You know what I mean? But so kind of sleeping in and waking up in environments like that probably contributed to.
Absolutely.
And then, but like I said, I went from obviously there's a you come back from something like that at my age. I didn't blame anybody, but I don't think I knew. I don't think any of us knew what we were doing. So we did whatever we thought everyone would do. We went and started drinking.
Right.
And so I drank for years, probably way too much, And again, this is before Johanna and I even met. And so that drinking was just not healthy at all. But in my mind, I never knew that it was from Ramadi.
Right.
Because Ramadi to me, again, it was incredibly violent. But it was like, man, that's okay. That was war. That's what happened.
That's what you went to go do. Yeah. And you did it, and you were done.
And then
in your mind.
A funny story is I didn't even think Ramadi was that bad until years and years later. I was at a conference and I heard Jocko and Leif Babin speak for the first time, and a lot of their presentation was on their experience in Ramadi. And I didn't know it was that bad until they started talking about it. I just assumed that everybody's tour to Iraq was Ramadi. I just thought Ramadi was. I thought every place that everyone went to in war was Ramadi. Come to find out, that was just not the case at all.
No,
you know what I mean. But so dealing with some of that, how it's affected my family. That sucks. That absolutely sucks. A few years ago, I found out that I had survivor's guilt, I guess, and I didn't really know much about that. It never occurred to me. But this weird thing happened. Johanna and I were in Weatherford, and she was connecting with one of her girlfriends, and they're like, "Hey, me and we're over here at this place getting a drink with a friend, and just if you're driving," and they were in Weatherford too, so we just happened to be there, and so we stopped in and talked to them, and they had a friend of theirs, which I knew and I don't think I'd really ever met him or talked to him before, but his name is Steve, and for some reason Ramadi came up, and I'm trying to tell Steve about this ambush, and what had happened was I was a squad designated marksman, so I had an M14, and I was always on rooftops looking. And this one particular mission, I was just on the roof way too long. Everybody knew we were there. So we were wrapping up, and me and my buddy, Davis, were coming out. He had an M14 as well. So we're coming off the roof, and we're coming out of the courtyard onto the street. And, there was a Humvee at the next intersection with a 50 cal machine gun mounted on it. And they're just watching our back. That's right at that moment. That's their purpose, is just keeping my team safe as we're coming off the roof. So we come off the roof and take a right down the road out of the courtyard, and then there was just this massive explosion behind us. And we turn around, and what had happened was they shot the Humvee with a armor-piercing rocket-propelled grenade, and it went through the driver's door, Mike Smith, man, and it just kind of right through his torso, and then once the gunner got blown out of the turret, and now so there's no one covering us because they just lit us up with a machine gun, man. And my buddy Davis was kind of taking a knee. He's got his gun orientated in that direction. He's not shooting. He's just looking, just froze. Mm-hmm. And so I look back. I see that. I see Davis, and I go and grab Davis, and Davis, we're about to die, and shook him out of it, and and then we started running down the road to get to cover. But that was a divine, supernatural protection, supernatural, because we were getting lit up with a heavy machine gun, and the whole wall was, just getting destroyed behind us, and me and Davis, not a scratch on us.
Wow. And
it's not like we were actively running away. Davis was on a knee, and I went back, grabbed him in the wall. You know what I mean? And yeah, the wall all around us is destroyed. Neither one of us got scratched.
Wow. That's for sure divine intervention.
Yeah,
you
and
had
then
plans to. You just didn't realize it right then. It was
we had
plans for you.
to. Then we had to drive that Humvee back. And Mike was unfortunately he was all over the inside. But the Humvee ran, so we drove it back. But he was on the windows, on the roof, all over the inside, and we had to drive that back. And then the fumes, the smells, all of that was still in there. I mean, it just happened. You know what I mean? But anyway, so let's backtrack. We ran into Hallie and Billy. They introduced us to this guy named Steve. I'm trying to tell Steve the story about Mike Smith for some reason, and I can't. And I'm not. You couldn't tell on this podcast, but I'm typically not an emotional person,
right?
And so I'm trying to talk to Steve, tell Steve this for some reason, and I just break down, just lose it, which is not. You know what I mean? That's not typically what I do.
No, I've been around you. I've been around you for years now, and I don't see that very often either.
And again, Steve is a stranger to me.
Oh yeah, so even more, less likely.
Steve is a stranger to me, and he looks at me, and I have no idea what he said, but this is what I heard. He said, "Man, it's not your fault that Mike died." He said, "It's not your fault. You weren't supposed to die, and God's not done with you." And I just melted. It's not your fault. You weren't supposed to die, and God's not done with you. And I'm like, man. And so Johanna and I, we were getting in the car and we're driving home. And I said, hey, I think I feel, sometimes I feel guilty that Mike died watching my back. And she's like, what? How did you not know this?
Right.
And I had no idea. It was just wild. So I tell that story because there's still things that God's showing me about myself and what I need, and that I'm in, and where I need to grow. And so from that point, that conversation with Steve, you fast forward 12 months, Johanna and I are at a church event that's called Freedom, and it's an excellent amount of month program, and then it was wrapped up with a conference. And so we're at the conference, and you're supposed to, what do you need freedom from? Whatever the case is, right? And so you're at this one portion, you go up to the altar and you meet a prayer partner, and they pray with whatever. I'm like, man, I don't need freedom from anything,
right?
But let me just follow the rules. So I kind of went up there, and I ran into I linked up with one of the prayer guys who I'd never met before, and I have no I don't know why I'm going up there. I can't think of anything that I need to be free from. And then for some crazy reason, I start telling them about this other gunfight in Ramadi, this other ambush. And what had happened was, again, I was on a rooftop with an M14, and it was at the intersection of Easy Street and Market Street. Easy Street was just a horrific place. Market was as well. But anyway, I saw a taxi cab, an orange and white car, and I wanted to shoot this guy. You know what I mean? But legally, I couldn't. I didn't have enough. I just knew I knew, something just told you, hey, you need to kill this guy. I think I'm an E3 at the time. And so I just tell my squad leader, hey, this is what I got. He's like, yep, got it. Just keep watching. And then that dude blew up, man. And it was a suicide car bomb. And I was like, man, I could have killed that guy. Mm-hmm. And it was super close, close enough where I'm on a rooftop, but the explosion blew me back off of whatever I was sitting on. And then, so that started the ambush, and then along with that ambush, just machine gun fire, sniper fire, just a nightmare that we got in the middle of. My crew was pinned down on the roof. So the gun trucks came in and started just letting loose with their heavy machine guns and all that stuff. I think we had a ton of rounds of, the Mark 19 got involved, 50, 240. just to bail us out, just to get us off the roof. And man, I remember I thought Josh Armstrong got shot. He was manning one of the machine guns, but from my position on the roof, like I can see him shooting. And then I saw a round just splash on the shield of the gun, and he just drops into the truck. I'm like, no way, man. And then I saw his hands come back up and grab and just start getting after. I was like, get him, man. But anyway, in that one fight, we lost 3 dudes got killed in that one fight. And I'm like, man, I wish I just shot that dude. Yeah. But legally, I couldn't. You know what I mean? And again, so let's backtrack a couple minutes. So I'm at this church event, this freedom event, and you're supposed to walk up there, and they're supposed to help you pray about whatever you need freedom from. And I'm like, man, Dennis Moore, like, what do I need freedom? You know what I mean? And so I go up to this guy, and I start to tell him this story, man, and I just for whatever reason, he didn't ask about it. You know what I mean? And I just started bawling. And I don't know what he said, but you know what I heard? It wasn't your fault. You weren't supposed to die, and God's not done with you. So 2 complete strangers, 12 months apart. I was like, oh my gosh. Hey, Johanna, I think I felt maybe guilty for when Fonseca and V and Gear got killed. And she's like, how did you not know that? I'm like, nobody told me.
Right.
And we're talking about this story that I'm telling you was like a couple years ago. You know what I mean? And that gunfight was like in 2004.
Yeah, so 21 years ago.
And I'm just, so God's still showing me stuff and setting me free. Man, that's one thing that's so incredible about our God, is that He can set you free from things that you don't even know that you need freedom from.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
incredible.
and I've seen you share that. I think one of the first times that I heard you speak and I heard you pray over something. One of the first times I met you, I really can't remember how that worked, but I asked you to come speak at one of the events, and I think we did it at your place, actually, and I asked if you'd speak, and you weren't even part of our group, and you're like, these guys. Yeah, I'll pray over it. I'll say something. But I've always, it's just, you've always been a humble person, and I do feel like even though you're not going to toot your own horn, that you're definitely, there is something, God does have something in store with you. I think He uses you. Since the day I've met you, it's been my goal to get closer to God, and I believe that the Spirit's working through you with a lot of people, because I know there's other things you do. And even going through the things you went through that you're sharing with us today, obviously it has molded you into the person that you are. I guess a question I would have would be relating all of that to present day, and we can step back to that if there's something else you'd like to talk about on that. But with your law enforcement position now, the work you do, I'm sure you still see a lot of lost people and things that are even, I'm sure at this point it's like, but I'm sure you still deal with some hard things, see some things that you have to learn to deal with. And I think you're hitting on a bunch of stuff that men in general, and I by no means am making a comparison to not being able to get your car started to being over in Ramadi in a gunfight and losing your friends like that. There's no comparison. But I think it does paint a pretty good picture for anybody listening that I'm trying to share. The reason why you're on today is that everybody struggles. There's things that people go through. Everybody deals with those things differently. But men typically end up compartmentalizing that stuff, get shoved to the back. We got other things to do. Our pride drives us forward. And sometimes we I'm going all over the place, but we also get in this thing of woe is me and forget, man, everybody around you is going through stuff. So, and then we get so wrapped up in our own stuff that we don't even pay attention to what somebody else and our brother that's sitting right beside us may be struggling really bad. And, you glaze that over. Don't even pay attention. Yeah. So I kind of bounced I don't even know if I made a point there, but I bounced all over the place. Back to the question, how do you use what you've learned, your walk with Jesus, your faith, in your job now and what you do? And how does that relate, or does it?
I think it does, but so Ramadi was just a place, right, in time, during a specific time, but it doesn't, like, going through that obviously has effects on me, and it's played a role of who I am today as a man. Absolutely. But it's not like that's 27 months of my life. Not who cares, but like, I'm 40 years old. I still got a long way to, I've got so much more to do. Mm-hmm. So like, I don't want to, from anyone who was in Ramadi during those 04 to those years, 04, 05, 06, 07, it was like, I'm not trying to discredit it or say it wasn't anything. I'm just saying, for me, I just wasn't going to be a victim to it. You know what I mean?
Time to push forward, move forward, on with life.
Yeah,
as you know, and how best you can.
And that's one of the ways that I honor, all the dudes that we lost. It's like, man, I'm gonna go live because they can't. Like, imagine, I think it would just suck to survive, but throw your life away, and throw your family away, and throw your wife away, and your marriage away, and you know what I mean? Like, I think it's a disservice to Jason. You know what I mean? Who got killed at the very first mission, got shot in the head at 18 years old. You know what I mean? He didn't get to come home. I do. How do I honor that? And I honor him by, hopefully being a phenomenal father and a phenomenal husband. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But the veteran community is hard for me to discuss because I have a lot, and I'm not trying to upset people, but I have a lot less sympathy because I'm like, hey, dude, like, let's move forward. Like, let's not drown in whatever we're dealing with, because you still have responsibilities today, right? Like, I can't let, I have a son, Wade just turned 4, and it's my responsibility to show him what a husband looks like and a father. You know what I mean? And if I, he is going to be the father that I am, right? So if I treat Johanna like garbage, he's probably going to treat his wife like garbage, right? And Raina, same thing. Raina's going to marry someone that looks just like me, right? And so if I'm abusive towards my wife or mistreating my wife, she's going to find a dude and she's going to let him mistreat her. So my job as a husband and father, honestly, I want to be Superman. Like, I want to give them something to look up to. Yep, they're going to see me hurt. They're going to see me cry as well. I'm not going to hide any of those things. But, man, I need to be the standard. So when Raina is, older and she's looking for a husband, like, I want her to be like, man, nope, that dude doesn't measure up. That dude doesn't measure up. Right? And I never want to see my son mistreat a woman. Right? And so if I never want to see my son mistreat a woman, I better not do it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Kind of a tangent. I apologize, but one of the big things that Ramadi,
what we're here to talk about.
One of the big things that that one of the biggest growth points that I got from Ramadi was my faith, man, because I've seen God do supernatural things. You know what I mean? Like, going to Ramadi, like, we all just thought we were never gonna die, right? And then Jason got shot that very first mission, and it changed everything. And then there was a time where, like, there was a transformation for us in Ramadi that went from, like, going there as young 18, 19-year-old kids, we're invisible and whatever, you know what I mean? Like, nothing will happen. To, my gosh, I don't think I want to make it home. Mm-hmm. Like, and I'm sure everyone probably had this prayer, but like, God, if you just get me out of this fight, you know what I mean? I'll do whatever you want. But
I know that's second nature to you, but you got to remember, for somebody like me, it's a civilian, and there'd be a lot of people that listen to this. They don't know what that's like, what that moment in time is. I never will. I mean, the best I could ever understand is through your stories and you telling me. It's just, I think everything that you're saying, as far as being a family man and a husband and father, and all those things are relatable on multiple levels, regardless of, like you said, that moment in time of your life. But it is something that only someone that's been there could ever even relate to. So,
but man,
I know that's special, and I appreciate everything all of you did.
Thank you. But faith is the biggest thing. My biggest takeaway. Ramadi taught me how absolutely horrific and disgusting what one human can do to another, right? And he talked about lessons learned and how it helps me as a cop today. Ramadi, I don't know if this comes across wrong or whatever, but if Ramadi in my mind is and this isn't fair to a lot of people, and I get it, but for me, Ramadi is my baseline. So if no one's dying, why are we panicking right now?
Right.
I don't care. Like we don't panic. Nobody is dying. And it's still there for me, but I know more that it's not always appropriate, right? Because that did not work.
Well, I think you'd be really good at training other police officers, because panic in any first responder situation is not good.
Right. But as a newly married young guy, Johanna was a teenager when I met her, so she's a few years younger than me. So my wife, man, she is an amazing girl.
Oh, she's a warrior in her own right.
So
she's so cool.
I met Johanna when she was 19 after my second trip to Ramadi. So she got the Dennis Moore after 27 months of Ramadi, fresh out. You know what I mean? Because what happened was after that second trip to Ramadi, I got tagged for recruiting. And so I went back to my hometown and was a recruiter for 3 years. And in that time, I met Johanna. But yeah, you're talking about a teenage girl meeting Dennis Moore at that time that's fresh out of Ramadi.
Right.
And girls are emotional creatures, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? But it did not work when she's upset about something, and why are you crying right now?
You're still a lean fighting machine. You don't have time.
Nobody
is
dying. Why are you crying right now? And that's just so unreasonable and unfair.
It's unfair. I think unfair. That word's the hit it. I mean, like I said, I've not been there, but I can totally relate to that. I hardened Amber and wish that I hadn't have. I can't. We're going through a season right now where trying to pull that back, and that's once you've done that, it's really hard to pull back.
Yeah. So Johanna has dealt with a lot for me, and
she's been a boss since the day I met her too. Though she's an awesome person.
She's a gift, man. She's an absolute gift, and I hope, man. I say that about my wife, but whoever is listening to this, your wife is a gift too, and so is your husband. God gave that human being to you.
Absolutely.
So no matter where you're at in your marriage, keep fighting. Do not give up. There's nothing my God can't do for you and for your marriage and for your family and for your kids. Please do not give up on your marriage.
Yeah. It's become too much of the norm to give up. I mean, it's everybody, oh yeah, you just get married and then you get divorced. If you don't like it, if it doesn't work out. Well, I mean, that's the same as anything in life. If you run on that playbook, your level of success is probably going to be pretty low at whatever you do. If you can't figure out how to navigate, and I'm not saying that there aren't some situations that are just, I wouldn't say impossible. I know that y'all been through some stuff. We've been through some stuff too. Everything it can be overcome, but if you give up and that's your first alternative is, well, I just can't. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I'm going to walk away from it. It seems like to me that's says a lot about your character and what you would do in the future to anything. And I'm a fighter. I make a lot of mistakes as a man. There's a lot of things that come out of my mouth. I wish I could pull back after they come out, but there's no pulling that back, And that book I was showing you earlier, Power of Words. I just read that recently, man, and it was an eye opener for me. It's just like the smallest things can make the biggest impact. I jumped off divorce for a minute, but it matters because usually the words is what ends up driving a marriage into that place. Mm-hmm. And, the tongue's the strongest muscle in your body. And it's ironic because it's also, the most powerful tool in your arsenal is your mouth and your tongue. But it says, he who protects his mouth and his tongue, keeps himself from calamity, basically. Mm-hmm.
But that's for like everything, right? Like sickness. Like stop talking about how sick you are until let's talk about God healing you.
Yeah. Stop speaking death on your life. Yeah. Stop speaking death on your marriage. There's power in that. It does matter what you say and how you think about things.
I think the Bible says that life and death are in the power of the tongue, right? But yeah, so just kind of circling back, it was not fair for Johanna to deal with me coming out of Ramadi because that was my baseline. But but in some circumstances, it's great for me. You know what I mean? You're not going to see me panic on a horrific car crash or a shooting or anything like that in my current job because it's just business, man. Find someone that needs help and help them. Right. You know what I mean? And people that we talked about how easy it is that people are just quitting marriage, man. Don't be a quitter. You know what I mean? Like, don't on anything. Don't on anything. As long as
there's probably some things you may want to quit, but
as long as there's air in your lungs, keep fighting. Keep fighting. Right. If you're in that stage of where you don't know if your marriage is going to last, I don't have all of the answers, but we can start with the first answer is Jesus, right? Like God created marriage between one man and one woman.
Right.
That's it.
No ifs, ands, or buts on that.
That's what the word says, and that's what we believe. And so if you're willing to fight for your marriage, man, you two go to church together. Like Johanna and I are completely imperfect and have disagreements and whatever else, but our baseline for our marriage is the word. Right. And so no matter what happens, no matter what the disagreement is, we believe that me and her are in a covenant relationship with God, and we don't believe in divorce.
Yeah, and Amber, the other day, it was just kind of random. Sitting at the dinner table, River, we were talking about a couple things, but we talked about a triangle, and that triangle is formed between Amber and I, God being in the center. And she asked River, she said, and he's in there, but we're trying to work our way down through that triangle with him, and explain how that all works. Because he asked some questions too. But she asked him, what's the strongest shape? Little turd says, triangle. And we're both like, well, pretty smart. Where'd you learn that at? And I don't know where he learned it at, but I think it's probably off some show or something he watches. He's always, he likes engineering stuff and anything that he can learn how to build stuff off of. So I'm sure it was off one of those. But anyways, yeah, if you have God at the peak, and you're both there, that is a strong triangle, and that will hold you together. But
a lot of people too do this thing in their marriage where it's like, well, if they do this, then I'll do that, and like that's not going to work. False. Either. That's not how the Bible says that a man shall love his wife as God loved the church, and Jesus loved the church, and what did Jesus do for the church? He spent his life serving the church, and then he died for the church, and so yeah, that's what you do for your wife. You lay down your life for her, no matter what, right? Because the next part of that scripture talks about, and a woman shall respect her husband. Mm-hmm. It doesn't say, you love her as God loves the church if she respects you. It says you love her as God loves the church, period. You know what I mean?
No, and I think the rest of it, once you're living in that direction, it falls in line.
Absolutely. If you and your wife both agree to serve Jesus, your marriage is rock solid.
Yeah.
If you actually are pursuing Jesus and allowing him to work in your marriage, right?
and I fought that for many years. Amber and I both did. I say fought it. It wasn't like a active fight or pursuit against it. It's just we didn't see how that fit into what we thought, our life was structured around. And it ended up, coming back to haunt us later on, after years and years of marriage. And we're still learning. I mean, this will be forever for the rest of our life, learning things, but it is, I try to stress it to everybody that I can. It is cool to know that you are not alone at any point. And when you put God first in your marriage and you both can talk about it and say, hey, you know what? Let's pray about it and let's just see where we're supposed to be going with this. And then you meet back at it. Then you end up with a teenage adopted child, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no good. Like for us, man, God is at the center of the house, period. And when I submit to God, Raina gets a better father. You know what I mean? When I submit to God, Johanna gets a better husband. But when I try to do it my way, like I'm, I am not that awesome.
Right.
And,
no, and that takes the first steps towards that are pretty hard especially for a man, because there's a lot of pride. You have to sit to the side for a minute and say, I can't do this alone. That takes a lot. I think it takes a lot on a daily basis for most men. I know it does for me. I have to be that time that I spend in the mornings, alone, praying and meditating. That's part of it, is to keep my eyes focused. And it doesn't take very long for you to get sidetracked and be like, oh, look at that bright, shiny thing over there. I'm going to go follow that thing for a minute and see where that leads. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, you're out in the middle of nowhere alone. Everything's crumbled kind of around you. You're like, oh crap, what did I do? But I mean, that quick, it just, so I would hope that we can, reach some men and women. I mean, this is geared towards men today. It has been for this month. We will have plenty of females on as well through the year, and they'll have their chance to say their side of it.
Yeah, I just want people to know, like, hey, if you are struggling, you are not alone. Like, quite the opposite.
That is
right?
so the point.
Everybody, like struggling is a normal part of life. Like that's, you know what I mean? But the cool thing, when you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you're never in it alone. No matter how hard your life gets. Let me talk to you about finances real quick, because this is pretty relatable. I bought a car recently, but because my last one broke, but I had this, that Volkswagen I was driving.
You pushed that thing into the dirt, I guess.
Yeah, it finally died. I got 320,000 miles on it.
It's awesome.
A gas engine. Right?
I was always impressed by that, too.
I love that car. It was an awesome car.
And you weren't driving like from here to, you weren't driving 15 miles. What was your daily commute?
74 miles one way.
Yeah, there you go. One way in a car with 300 and something thousand miles. This guy.
Yeah, finally died on me, but in that process there was minor things that would break and whatever, and it cost money and whatever. But when we talk about finances, like everything I have is God's. Like everything I have, I'm a steward of, right? And so when the car breaks, instead of getting upset about it, it's like, that's fine, God. This is how you want to spend your money. You want to spend your money on breaking this car? That's fine. Like spend your money on whatever you want, right? But it's so freeing. Like when you actually surrender your life to God, man, everything is His responsibility, right? Like it's my responsibility to give it to Him, and then it's His responsibility to take care of the rest.
I like to say at that point right there, I think it's a good time to say it, because a lot of people get a little askew on what that means. And I know you're not saying, oh, I surrendered to God, so I'm just going to hang out, hope things work out for the best, like that. I mean, you're still out there grinding, going to work, doing what you got to do to make it happen. You're just surrendering what happens to God.
Yeah,
But
because
you're not laying there being
says,
lazy and just expecting things to happen for you.
No,
I mean,
absolutely
you got to
not.
get out there and get it and get it going.
I mean, the word says if a man doesn't work, he don't eat, right? Like, so no, it's not.
Well, I just say that because
Yeah.
you know, I've heard that a lot as an argument back. You know, well, yeah, if I just surrender everything, then how am I going to make it? Well, God has a way of providing, but I mean, you do have to. You got to get out there and get yourself.
Absolutely. But man, I'm just again, and it comes from Ramadi. It's just is my faith. It's like, man, no matter what scenario I'm in, God's got my back,
right? And
I trust Him with that. So if I get burned down at work, no big deal, because God's going to continue to take care of my family.
Right.
I mean, it is a huge deal, obviously, but
right.
Like Johanna and I are, I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but it's surrendering to God, right? Everything we have is His. Everything, like we are, it's dangerous, right? So I told you my newest child is actually 16. Hey, when you start hanging out with Jesus, and hearing His voice, my wife, I was working, but my wife was at church a few years ago, and they were doing I think the organization is called Hope Local, and they promote teenagers in the getting adopted out of foster care, because they're the least likely to get adopted are teenagers, and then they just age out of the system, and then their chances of ending up in jail and addictions just skyrocket. So they played a video of my daughter Ava at our church, man, and promoting an adoption. And I come home from work, and Joanna's like, "Hey, can we talk?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's going on?" And she tells me, "Hey, I think I'm supposed to adopt this girl." I'm like, all right. I mean, if that's what God wants, but adoption wasn't on the table. It wasn't talked about. We weren't thinking about it. We weren't praying about it. We were just living our normal life. And then, Johanna felt the Lord call us into that, not just foster care or adoption, but specifically Ava is what God gave her. And so we fought that for a couple of years. We had to get licensed. So many people told us no, like in the foster care system, like, hey, no because of this and no because of that. She was like she had been in the system since she was like 3 years old.
Wow.
And we got introduced to her through this video when she was 14. She had already been adopted twice and given back. She spent a lot of time in group homes and RTCs. They, based on how her high category, if you will, of it was a mess, right? But based on that, they said, essentially, you guys have never done this before. You're not qualified to know. And so we got told no for many times. And then they finally found her a home to go to. They were going to put her in this home for 6 months with the intent to adopt. 6 months ended. Some things went south, and they gave her back. And then they called us, hey, are you still interested in Ava? I'm like, yeah, dude, give me that girl. That's my daughter. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm kind of joking about it, but like, what I told Johanna was, I was like, man, you need to stop talking to Jesus. The last time you talked to Jesus, I ended up with a teenager.
Well, I think that, I had Corey on, and we were talking about surrendering it to Jesus, listening to what he has to say. I think I had said, it smooths some things out. And he looked at me and was like, that doesn't mean it makes it easier. Yep. And I think that's the point you're getting is that's part of the human experience. I think struggle is what makes us stronger. I think that's what kind of builds up what we're looking for eternity. And the companionship that he would be looking for is in people that have grown through struggle and come out on the other end of it with the gifts that come from that are really hard to see, but the compassion, empathy, patience, kindness, love. All of those things that are inherent with going through a struggle. And everybody I've met, and most people that are watching this now know my story, but everyone that I've met, on my new journey now, that have had some kind of medical trauma or gone through something, at that immediate moment, the same as me, they're struggling and really not sure why that's happening, but it does become way clearer after, and has for me anyways, who I was pre-stroke and who I am now. And I mean, I cannot describe the weight and the amount of love I have for people now, and that I want to share. It's almost frustrating. It's like, man, I wish I could give you some of this, and you go share it. That's what I do this for. I want, and I think you said it. I bounce all over the place. I got, my brain is kind of scrambled too. But that's why I do this. I want to make sure that people, first of all, know that they're not alone. I want to build up, men and women. Specifically this month, I'm gearing on men because men are the leaders. And I want to see a growth in young men and older men to be more leaders, have more leadership qualities, be more Christ-like, follow him, because I think we're coming into some tough times. People have been saying that for years, but I mean, it's obvious now. We are definitely in a spiritual warfare, and there's stuff, you probably see it every day being a law enforcement officer. I'm sure just the insanity of human.
Is. Yeah. That's what this gender confusion is. It's spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's the enemy trying to disfigure what God has created.
And you probably see it on a daily basis. I don't know. Denton's pretty liberal area, so I'm sure you see a lot of things.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, man.
I can only imagine the ridiculousness. I mean, and being who you are probably you're probably really good at what you do in that area to be able to stay calm, because I know there's a lot of dumb crap that goes on in that city. There was 25 years ago, whenever I still lived up north. I can't imagine what it's like now.
Yeah. Man, one thing I want to tell you too is that life is so much easier, and I'm going to explain this, but it's so much easier with God, right? And I say easy because of the peace that you have. I'm not saying it's going to be easier financially or physically or any of those things. Like
I think it's harder.
You still do, right? Because God puts you on a mission, and the stuff God calls you to is not easy.
Right.
Like, man, the stuff God calls people to do is not easy. But the mental peace that you get from following God, knowing that, man, it's literally His. No, that's God's problem.
Yeah.
I'm going to do whatever He tells me to do, and He's going to work it out, right? Because it says, my God shall supply all my needs. Right? You know how much easier it is mentally for me to know that my God shall supply all my needs for Raina and for Wade and for Johanna? Like, yes, I'm going to work and provide for my family. But no, I can go to work tomorrow and get fired. I do not care, because my God is my provider. I love my job. Absolutely love it. They can fire me tomorrow, and I do not care, because my God shall supply all my needs. It's a law. He has to do that, because He is not a liar. You know what I mean? And I'm just going to keep trucking, man, because God's got my back.
When you said something about getting burnt down at work, I mean, there's worse things. Yeah. I had a stroke. I went from, running 100 miles an hour to running 0 miles an hour in a heartbeat, but God did provide, even though I didn't give Him the time of day when that first happened, I mean, there was obviously a plan for me too. It's crazy. Like you said, once you do have a mission, it's not necessarily going to be an easy one.
Yeah.
But there's worse things than just getting burnt down, and knowing that God's going to provide even during those times. Almost the unimaginable things that can happen. There is definitely a comfort and release in that. That I'd love for everybody to know. I got a couple good friends that'll fight against it. They'll probably listen to this podcast and still fight against it, you know, but they're fighting a never ending battle. And I keep telling them, man, I was like, I get it. I was there where you're at. I fought this for many years, even though I knew the truth in my heart. Man, I fought against it pretty hard, you know, for years to the full surrender. I guess I should say.
Yeah, it's, man, God is so cool. He just does. I remember this was quite a few years ago. Johanna and I were in church, and you know, do you ever? For me, you know, it's easy to like just check the box Christianity, right? Like, yep, read my Bible. Yep, went to church this week. Yep, did this. Yep, said a prayer before dinner. But like, that is not helping me grow closer to Jesus. Right? That is not what pursuing Jesus looks like, right? And I was kind of in one of those stages, one of those phases. And one Sunday afternoon, I'm in church, and there was a period of time where I was in a ton of pain from I had hurt my back, and the doctor said, "Oh, you know, there's just pain medication and pain," which obviously I was. What do you do with pain medication? You mix it with whiskey. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I was doing. And the doctor's like, "No, you can't fix this. You know, this is just how you're gonna live." And I'm so like I hate this now, looking back on it, but I just believed it. Like, if you're like, don't ever believe that you can't get better. That's ridiculous, right? Like, I don't like, if God can raise the dead, he can fix whatever you're going through. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm in church this one Sunday, right? And I'm dealing with this back pain, and I'm not necessarily pursuing Jesus. I'm just kind of like, man, what? I'm just checking the box. So, but at the end of the service, the pastor literally, he's like, "Hey, out of the blue, right? Completely out of the blue. Hey, someone's in here with some pretty serious back pain that God wants to deal with." I'm like, and I'm not an emotional. Makes me want to break down now, dude.
Right.
I definitely wasn't. You know, this was back, you know, when around the time I first met Johanna and that, like, in recruiting. So I am super unemotional. You know what I mean? Johanna, even today, she'll tell me, "Show me one emotion that you have other than anger." I'm like, I have so many emotions, right? But dude, so he's like, "Hey, someone, you know, God wants to. You've got back pain. Whoever you are, come up here and let God deal with it." So I look at Johanna, and I just start literally just bawling my eyes out. I'm like, "Is he talking about me?" And she's like, "Yeah." You know what I mean? Retard, like, let's go. You know what I mean? And so we went up there, and there was a couple up there, and they're like, "What's going on?" And I couldn't talk. Like, I was crying. Like, I was like ugly crying. You know what I mean? So Johanna had to tell them hey, you know, it's his back. And they prayed on me, and I'm talking about miraculous healing. I'm crying in my car on the way home, just so joyful. Like, but it was so cool because I told you I was in this period of like check the block Christianity where, yep, I might read and go to church and whatever, but I'm not pursuing Jesus, man. But that was such a personal moment between me and God because it showed me that, like, God's still here. He still loves you. He still cares about you. Like, all of the things that's going on in the world right now, he cares about me in Winchington, Massachusetts, to come down, or Ashburnham, wherever we were, to come down and heal my back. And everything that's going on, he loves me that much, man. And knowing that I am not being the perfect Christian that perfect Christianity label that we put on ourselves, right? And I'm just kind of floating along life, and he's like, oh my gosh, I'm in the car crying, and I'm not a crier, right? I'm in the car bawling my eyes out by myself. I think Johanna and I took 2 different cars that day, so I'm literally a grown man, just bawling my eyes out, rolling down the road, but like I'm happy, but I'm crying. And then I get that night or whatever, I think we're in the kitchen, Johanna's cooking supper, and I keep like touching my toes, and Johanna's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I can touch my toes, and there's no pain. Like, this is amazing, right?" But just so many cool, like, he loves you so much, man. And I just want you to know that. Just like you talked about this earlier, I just want people to know how much Jesus loves them, right? I have no idea why I told that story, where that came from, but
it's awesome.
Just supernatural healing, right? Like, I don't care what you're struggling with. Like, don't quit. Don't give up. I'm going to tell you the same thing that God's told me 2 times so far. It's not your fault, right? You're not supposed to die, and God's not done with you. If that applies to you, awesome. But no matter what fight you're in, no matter what struggle you're in, first of all, don't tolerate losing. Don't tolerate quitting. Let my God show himself and reveal himself to you. And let him work a miracle in your life. You need a miracle, let my God do that for you.
Absolutely. I think that's a good spot to stop. Unless you got something else you want to say. That's pretty powerful stuff to me right there. That's the real deal. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. That's a good spot.
Yeah.
Good spot to leave it right there. Man, I appreciate you coming on today and breaking down the walls. I know it's not necessarily always comfortable opening up like that, but I think it's very important for everybody to be able to see that and know they're not alone. I mean, it's the whole point of this whole thing, and you just finished it that way. So
everybody struggles.
My brother, I love you. Thank you.
I love you, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, appreciate you tuning in. Please share it. Let's get the word out. Love each other. Peace out.